The lights of the cameras were almost blinding. The sound of 100 quiet conversations filled the ornate room. These were the most powerful men in the world, gathered in one place. But the real story was not the smiles for the press. It was not the handshakes or the prepared statements. The real story happened when the microphones were supposed to be off. It was a promise of impossible wealth. It was a whisper that could topple an institution. What you are about to see will change how you view money, technology, and power in America. This is the story of a $600 billion deal and a secret about the Federal Reserve. Subscribe to our channel right now and tell us in the comments, who do you think really controls the economy? The air in the White House Rose Garden was thick with an unnatural politeness. It was September 2025, and the night was unusually warm, but not as warm as the new relationship between the president and the king of Silicon Valley. Mark Zuckerberg, founder of Meta, was seated in a place of honor. This, by itself, was a spectacle for the assembled press. They all remembered the history. They remembered the bans, the accusations, the public feuding that had defined their relationship for years. Trump had once called Facebook an enemy of the people. Zuckerberg had, in turn, presided over the deplatforming of a sitting president, an act that many thought was unforgivable. Yet, here they were. The past seemed to be forgotten, or at least conveniently filed away. Zuckerberg had been seen at Mar-a-Lago. He had donated $1 million to the inaugural fund. The tech world and the political world were watching this dinner as a sign of a great realignment, a mending of fences that could only be built with gold. And then the announcement came. It wasn't a subtle policy shift. It was a headline designed to shake the foundations of the tech industry. Mark Zuckerberg, when asked by the president about his commitment to the American economy, leaned forward. He announced that Meta would be investing $600 billion in the United States by 2028. $600 billion. The number hung in the air, electric and unreal. It was a figure so large it was difficult to comprehend, a sum larger than the entire GDP of many nations. The reporters scribbled furiously. This was the story. A massive investment in AI, in data centers, in American jobs. It was a public triumph for both men. Trump beamed, his approval obvious. He had brought a tech giant to heel, securing a massive pledge for his America First economic vision. Zuckerberg looked like the dutiful corporate statesman, reinvesting in the nation that had allowed him to build his empire. It was a perfect piece of political theater, sealing their new alliance. But the theater wasn't over. As the main course was cleared and the conversation shifted to other topics, a hot mic, a single live microphone that someone had failed to cut, captured what happened next. It was not meant for the public. It was not meant for the history books. It was a moment of unfiltered, accidental truth. The audio is faint, but it is unmistakable. After the grand declaration, after the applause, Zuckerberg was seen leaning in very close to the president. The microphone caught his voice, a quiet, almost apologetic mutter that was in stark contrast to his confident public pledge. The world would hear it looping on the news for weeks. "Sorry, I wasn't ready," the Meta CEO whispered. "I wasn't sure what number you wanted to go with." The words landed like a bomb. In an instant, the entire narrative of the evening collapsed. The $600 billion promise was not a spontaneous declaration of faith in the American economy. It was a script. It was a pre-coordinated, pre-approved number. The implication was staggering. The president and the most powerful tech CEO in the world had staged a major economic announcement for the cameras. It raised an immediate and terrifying question. If this was staged, what else was? The media, of course, exploded. Commentators on every network dissected the few seconds of audio. Was Zuckerberg flustered? Had he intended to say a different number? Or was this just the normal, messy way that politics and big business were done? A glimpse behind a curtain we all knew was there. Meta's PR team went into immediate damage control. A post appeared on Zuckerberg's Threads account within hours. He clarified that he had multiple spending projections, one through 2028 and one through the end of the decade. He claimed he wasn't sure which number the president was asking for. He said he simply shared the lower number and clarified the larger one with Trump privately afterward. It was a plausible explanation. It was clean, corporate, and logical. It was also, to many, completely unbelievable. The apology, "I wasn't ready," sounded far too much like an actor who had missed his cue. The public reaction was cynical. People on social media and Reddit forums pointed out the obvious. This wasn't a simple clarification. This was proof that the entire event was a charade, a performance by two of the world's most powerful men to mutually boost their images. The trust in the announcement evaporated. But the story, as sensational as it was, began to fade. The news cycle moves on. The hot mic scandal was dismissed by many as a simple gaffe. It became just another example of political maneuvering. But in the rush to analyze the words everyone heard, the world missed the real story. The title of this video is not "Mark Zuckerberg was unsure about a number." The title includes the Federal Reserve. And this is where the investigation truly begins. Because sources inside that dinner, people who have spoken on deep background, suggest that the hot mic moment was a distraction, a lucky catch that only revealed the smallest part of the conversation. What the hot mic didn't catch was the second whisper, the real whisper, the one that happened after the apology, the one that the audio didn't pick up. This is the conversation that links the $600 billion to the most powerful and most criticized financial institution in the country. To understand this, you must first understand the president's public and very loud obsession. For years, Donald Trump has raged against the Federal Reserve. He sees it as a rogue institution, a body of unelected bureaucrats who control the nation's economy with no accountability to the White House. During his first term, he relentlessly attacked the Fed chair, Jerome Powell, demanding lower interest rates. He believed the Fed was actively working against him, keeping the economy on a leash when he wanted it to run wild. Now, in his new term, that criticism has become an active war. The Trump administration has been systematically targeting the Fed's independence. We have seen officials resigning under pressure. We have seen attempts to dismantle the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, an agency that gets its funding directly from the Fed, as a way to starve the institution. Trump wants one thing: control. He wants the ability to dictate monetary policy from the Oval Office, to cut rates and fuel the market on his command, not on the schedule of the Fed's governors. And in Mark Zuckerberg, he found an unlikely and incredibly powerful potential ally. Why? Because Mark Zuckerberg is one of the only other men on Earth who has tried to challenge the global monetary system. Do you remember Libra? Meta's ambitious and ultimately failed cryptocurrency project. It wasn't just a new digital coin. It was a direct assault on the sovereignty of national currencies. Libra was designed to be a global currency, controlled not by a central bank, but by a consortium of corporations led by Facebook. The Federal Reserve, along with other central banks, saw this as a mortal threat. They, along with politicians, killed Libra in its crib. Zuckerberg's ambition was checked. He was forced to bend the knee. So now, let's return to the dinner. We have two men, both of whom see the Federal Reserve as an obstacle. Trump sees it as a political roadblock. Zuckerberg sees it as the institution that killed his dream of a global currency. What could they possibly have to talk about? The $600 billion, the sources say, was the down payment. It was the price of admission. The hot mic gaffe was just a clumsy mistake. The real whisper, the one that followed, was about the Fed. It was a quiet question from one powerful man to another. It was about technology. It was about digital currency. It was about what would happen if the Fed's power was finally broken. What if a new private-public partnership could be formed? What if the Fed coin, the long-theorized digital dollar, wasn't run by the Fed, but was instead outsourced? What if the infrastructure for a new American digital currency was built and managed by a company like Meta, a company that already has the wallets, the identities, and the global reach. A company that has already pledged $600 billion to build the data centers that would be required. This is the whisper. Not a conspiracy theory, but a logical, terrifying convergence of interests. Trump gets to break the Fed, and Zuckerberg gets to become the new Fed, achieving his Libra dream under the protection of the American flag. The $600 billion isn't an investment. It's a bribe. This brings us to the final and most critical part of the story, the motive. Why would Mark Zuckerberg, a man who built his company on a narrative of global openness, tie his entire future to such a controversial political figure? The answer is simple. He had no choice. While Zuckerberg was dining at the White House, his lawyers were fighting a different battle. Meta is currently facing the largest, most existential antitrust lawsuit in its history. The Federal Trade Commission, or FTC, is actively trying to break up the company. They want to force Meta to sell Instagram and WhatsApp. This lawsuit is not a fine. It is a death sentence for the empire Zuckerberg built. If it succeeds, Meta as we know it ceases to exist. It would be his life's work, undone. The case is strong, and for years, it has been Meta's #1 existential threat. But that lawsuit is being waged by a government agency, and the head of that government agency, the FTC, is ultimately appointed by and answers to the president, the man who was just promised $600 billion. The connection is not subtle. It is a direct, transactional exchange. Zuckerberg's new alignment with the administration is not about shared ideology. It is about survival. He is lobbying the president, both publicly with dinners and privately with massive investment pledges to save his company. He is, in effect, trading his loyalty for his empire. The $600 billion is a signal to the administration. I am useful. My company is an asset to your America First agenda. We can build your AI. We can power your economy, and we can even help you with your Fed problem. All you have to do is call off the dogs at the FTC. The whisper, "I wasn't sure what number you wanted to go with," suddenly takes on a much darker meaning. It wasn't just about a press release. It was about the price. How much would it cost to make the antitrust lawsuit disappear? How much for the president's favor? $600 billion was, apparently, the accepted number. And for the president, the deal is even sweeter. He not only gets to declare a massive victory for American jobs, he gains a powerful and now very compliant ally in Silicon Valley. He gets a tool, a communications platform with billions of users that is now deeply incentivized to stay on his good side. He also gets a partner in his war against the Fed. This is the great convergence, the merging of the state with the tech sector. This isn't just lobbying. It is a new form of corporate power that is indistinguishable from state power. It is a world where a CEO can buy his way out of an antitrust suit with a check big enough to prop up a nation's investment numbers. What we are witnessing is the privatization of government functions. The $600 billion investment in data centers isn't just for AI. It is the infrastructure for a future where a private company might manage the digital dollar, track citizen spending, and have more insight into the economy than the Federal Reserve ever did. The hot mic didn't just catch a gaffe. It caught the sound of a new world being born. A world where accountability is a thing of the past, where massive wealth buys not just influence, but immunity. It's a world where the lines between the White House and Meta's headquarters are so blurred they may as well not exist at all. This is the true story of the promise and the whisper. It wasn't just about a number. It was about the price of our entire system. The real question is no longer who runs the world. The question is, what happens now that they are all working together, in the open, and they don't even bother to turn off the microphones?